Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority.
Good morning. As agreed at the Assembly's annual meeting on the 6th of May 2025, the Confirmation Hearing Committee is allowed to appoint a chair on a meeting-by-meeting basis for the 2025-2026 Assembly year. Therefore, for the first item of business, I will conduct an election for the chair for this meeting in accordance with the GLA's standing orders. In the event of one candidate being nominated, I will declare the nominated candidate chair of the Confirmation Hearings Committee for this meeting. A proposer and a seconder is required for each nomination. In the event of two candidates being nominated, I will ask for votes in favour of each candidate. Are there any nominations?
Yes, Chair. I'd like to nominate Assembly Member Small-Edwards as Chair.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second that suggestion.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Then I declare that Assembly Member Small-Edwards is elected Chair of the Confirmation Hearings Committee for today's meeting. Chair.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Can I now welcome everyone to this meeting of the Confirmation Hearings Committee. The Chair of the Assembly has agreed that this meeting be called as a matter of urgency in order to hold a confirmation hearing for the Mayor's proposed appointee to the office of Chair of the London Legacy Development Corporation within 3 weeks of the date of receipt of the notification from the Mayor, in accordance with Section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act of 1972. Can I ask our clerk, Diane Richards, if any apologies have been received for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Assembly Member Hall, for whom Assembly Member Garrett is substituting, and also from Assembly Member Baker, for whom Assembly Member Desai will be substituting. And also in accordance with Standing Order 8.2, with the permission of the Chair, Assembly Member Bukhari is attending the meeting as a non-voting observer.
Welcome all. We now come to declaration of interests. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendation set out at item 4 and ask Assembly members if they have any other disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Can I also invite Keith Morgan, CBE, to declare any interest relevant to the business of this meeting or in relation to the proposed appointment?
No declarations from me, thank you.
Can I ask the committee to note its membership as agreed by the London Assembly at the London Assembly meeting on the 13th of November 2025? Can I ask the committee to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of November 2025 to be signed by me as a correct record? Thank you. Can I welcome Keith Morgan, CBE, to the meeting? The committee will be putting questions to you in relation to your proposed appointment to the office of Chair of the LLDC. However, can I first ask members to note the background information circulated within the agenda for the meeting? Thank you. We will now move on to the question and answer session. The first question is from myself, and it is, what experience and attributes would you bring to the role of Chair of the LLDC?
Yeah, thank you. I think I want to start by just saying that I think this is already a remarkable legacy for London, with the range of sporting, leisure, cultural, academic, innovation assets that many people have contributed to over this period of time. And of course, certainly the people I know and speak to are all very proud of everything that's been achieved. So the question is, what's the next phase for the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park? And I think the next phase is associated with activating and bringing life to these assets and bringing increased commerce, job opportunities, and I think also leisure and well-being opportunities for the people who live in, work in and around the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. So that's the backdrop in a way in terms of answering the question about attributes and experiences. And I think the things that I would point out or bring to the table would be, first of all, over the years, I've had a lot of experience at a senior level and leading organisations which are really at the interface, let's say, of the public and the private sectors, where you achieve things by working in partnership with commercial partners, but also with people who are responsible for public policy. And you're delivering on a series of public policy objectives, but at the same time, you're working to create value for the taxpayer or to return money for the taxpayer. And I can point to experiences that I've had both after the great financial crisis working at UKFI and also setting up and running the British Business Bank, which have been very much experiences in that light. The second thing I was going to mention was, I think there's just a huge opportunity for generating economic growth and innovation in and around the Olympic Park. And my experience has been creating the conditions for economic development and increased innovation. That was almost the entirety of my work at the British Business Bank. And also, I think importantly, spreading those benefits across, the segments broadly of society. And I think that's a key element of what's required here as well. And the third thing, this is a very responsible and accountable chair position. And, I think I bring good experience of both establishing and managing good governance in a public sector setting. I've been a CEO of a large arm's length organisation. I've been an accounting officer, which I took those responsibilities very, very seriously in terms of managing public money. And I've also been a chair. And I think one's got to bring a very strong sense of accountability to these positions, operate with all of those requirements of transparency and objectivity, always have very good understanding of the decision-making processes, the constitutional background in which you're operating, and be prepared for the scrutiny that should be there if you are essentially a public servant and working with taxpayers' money. So those would be, I think, three of the things that I would offer and bring to the table.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that response. My next question is just how do you envisage managing your time doing this alongside your other commitments that you have?
Yeah, so you will have seen from my CV, which I think it's been circulated, that I've got some other board positions, some commercial ones, some actually with nominated by HM Treasury in one case, and some not-for-profit as well. In total, those add up to 2 days a week for me. So I'm not in an executive role, so I don't have the kind of 110% commitment to an executive role. So essentially, 2 days a week currently taken, and I think that leaves adequate capacity to really fulfil this role and give everything that is required.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Bakari.
Thank you. You've talked about the need for economic growth and job opportunities that you'll be focusing on, but that's quite a challenge as well. And I'd like to know a little bit more about how you're going to achieve this. It's not going to be easy. It's not easy for any government to do these things as well. So how are you going to achieve that?
No, you're right. I mean, I don't think we should take that challenge lightly at all. And I'm sure, having spoken to the executive team at LLDC as well, that they know that there's something very important to work on here. Look, the elements of opportunity, I think, if I can just kind of paint a picture, I think that this is already a world-class sports and leisure district. Okay, there's also the potential for this to be a world-class innovation district, building upon what's already there, and a world-class cultural district. Now, you can identify places that can lay claim to one of those, but actually not many that can aspire to meeting all three of those. And I think all three of those bring opportunities for increased commerce, increased entrepreneurship, increased opportunities, increased jobs. I really can't tell you at this stage exactly where those jobs will come from, but I would expect them to be, before I've looked at the detail, I would expect them to be a lot of opportunity around innovation, both in terms of people like creating their own entrepreneurial small businesses. The growth that comes out of that in terms of people investing in those businesses and growing them. There's a very interesting, I think, opportunity with the cultural district to try and, because it's not just a cultural district, there's also a kind of an academic district as well, right? I mean, there's real life academic research going on in this area. And I think there's an opportunity to link that into some of the national initiatives. For example, the creative industries element of the industrial strategy, I think, would be a very interesting area to look at. And then, I think because we're looking at opportunities for inclusive growth as well, then I think we need to really understand where the gaps are. So if you looked at the surrounding boroughs, where are the gaps in unemployment? Which are the elements of unemployment, youth unemployment, others where you can actually identify the issue and try to come up with the strategies to create solutions. So it may, you always aspire to high value jobs, but you need to look broadly at the range of jobs, and it could include hospitality and other jobs as well. So I think the opportunity is there, and I think it's a really unique collection of ingredients. And I think this is now the goal, is to create something which is recognisably successful in creating jobs and opportunities.
You talked about that legacy at the start, and also the fact that this role is going to be a scrutinised role as well, and you're up for that challenge. And I'm glad to hear that you are. So, what kind of priorities has the Mayor asked you to focus on specifically? Because it'll be of interest to us to know what areas we're going to be scrutinising you on.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think just very recently, I think in the last few weeks, LLDC has released its strategic framework, and within that, there are 3 areas. They've got kind of nice labels to them, but one is habitat, which is basically the underlying infrastructure of the and environment of the park. One is talent and going into the job opportunities that you said, and the third is health and well-being. So those are priorities, broad priorities, that have been agreed by the LLDC and also the representatives from Mayor's office and from the boroughs on the board. I think that it translates into and I think one of the things that I will be quite keen to establish quickly is a set of prioritised actions that fall from those targets, and with measurable outcomes as well. And so, and the immediate priorities that I can see now, I mean, I'm talking a little bit from the outside because, I'm at the end of a selection process where, like all the other candidates, I've had the opportunity to meet executive on one occasion. But what I can see is that there's an immediate priority around building out the remainder of the estate, including focusing on residential development and the affordable homes. I think there's a need to activate, let's say, and bring life to the East Bank, which is close to be completed. And I think you've got to put more flesh on the bones around the jobs and the talent strategy. The other thing that I did speak with the Mayor about was and I think it comes back to one of the things I mentioned before. I mean, there is a long-term challenge around financial sustainability. And so I think it's going to be very important to deliver on the public policy objectives, whilst at the same time taking steps to accelerate, let's say, the repayment of the substantial investment that's gone into this area. Now, that is, I think, it's kind of by its nature a long-term commitment, right? I mean, this is £500 million and building, and so I think you've got to focus on the drivers behind accelerating repayment without compromising, let's say, on the underlying public policy objectives you're trying to fulfil.
Assembly Member Garrett.
Morning. Looking at your CV, obviously a very impressive background that you have, but it's principally in sort of banking, finance, that area, whereas obviously London Legacy Development Corporation and Elizabeth Park is predominantly a redevelopment, construction, and perhaps community engagement mission. So how do you think, firstly, how does your background in financial services, how's that relevant to this role? And how do you think you would address those challenges that are specific to this role?
I mean, it may be that I should explain a little bit more about the British Business Bank because, it's an economic development bank entirely funded by the taxpayer and focused on SMEs. So the government didn't invest in this with the intention of making high returns. It was really, the basis of it was to try and generate increased growth, increased opportunities for SMEs. So the nature of that was actually trying to improve both economic outcomes and social outcomes. Now, the social side of that is quite interesting because, of course, you could just go and invest in every tech startup. But, for example, we ran a program called Startup Loans, which was essentially giving £5,000 to £25,000 to people who otherwise would not have the opportunity to set up their business. And that could be people who wanted to open a hairdressing shop. It could be people who wanted to be a plumber. It could be people who had a tech idea. Nevertheless, that was an opportunity to create benefit broadly in a societal outcome, let's say. And what we had was, we've now, I think now more than 100,000 of these loans gone out, and they go disproportionately to postcodes which you would count as being more deprived. And actually, you may not think this to be sort of terribly. There are as many women as men who have received these startup loans, which is actually rather unusual in the finance world. And it goes to a broad spectrum of ethnic origins as well. So there's been a focus on the broader aspects of economic development and social outcomes. With respect to the LLDC, you mentioned construction, for example, housing. I'm actually really grateful that there are people in the executive team on the board who've got deep experience in these areas. My experience comes from actually understanding the finance challenges behind development. We spent a lot of time with Homes England and the DHCLG on understanding the risks to housing development. And in fact, we created risk-sharing arrangements to do that. And then the innovation side and real focus on developing new businesses and new technologies and spin-outs from university, etc., was another element. So I think all those elements, even though you can label them as finance, have got a relevance to what we're looking at here.
Understood. But it sounds like the bottom line is that if you sort of think about the balance of skills across the board and that are in the LLDC, what you're bringing is not expertise in sort of construction, project management, or community engagement. It's skills in finance, funding, perhaps cost control, and business development.
Yeah, I mean, community engagement, I've spent a fair amount of time working. Startup Loans is delivered largely by community organisations. I spent a large amount of time, with those organisations and with people who've actually taken those loans themselves. But yes, I mean, I'm not claiming to be an expert in everything.
Understood. And I think you're also involved in the Design Council. I don't know whether that would have any, that experience have any benefit or.
Yes, I think it does. I think for your benefit, the Design Council is it's a charity under Royal Charter, so it means it's got a kind of a national purpose, and it's there to champion design across the industry and in the built environment. I've been a trustee for many years. During that time, we've completely refocused the Design Council to the challenge of the age, which is essentially sustainability, and the phrase is designing for planet. So, for example, just earlier in the year, we hosted the World Design Congress, which is a bit like the Olympics of design, actually, which was focused entirely upon sustainability, put the UK at the centre of it. And equally, this is an organisation which is very much in the debate around creating, the Homes Challenge in the UK and neighbourhoods. There's a very interesting report just issued quite recently on design for neighbourhoods, and I'm sure that's got a lot of relevance and probably a lot of co-thinking with work that's going on in the LLDC as well.
Yeah, just think about the public realm. There's a view that we've become very utilitarian in the way that we think about even things like lampposts, for example, fences. And if you look at, let's say, the Victorian-era legacy of built environment in London, it's often much more decorative and often creates a lovely environment for people to spend time and attractive to tourists. I don't know whether this is something that the Design Council is involved in or whether you have a view on and how that might impact.
I do, actually, and I think it's got some very interesting other angles to it. Let's take safety, for example. So, one of the areas that this recent report on Design for Neighbourhoods looked into was like the design conditions in which you can create safer places for people. And it kind of goes to your point of creating places where people are happy to meet and happy to exchange. One of the things that is quite interesting is that over the last 10 years up to 2020, there's been a big decline in how much people trust their neighbours. I mean, it's dreadful, right? And some of that you can try to address in the way in which things are designed. One of the issues that comes through is that you get these kind of long, lonely corridors, right? No opportunity for residents to actually meet their neighbours, pass the time of day, no natural light coming through in the corridors. Close places to where people live for children to play, because then parents mix as well. Now, all I'm saying is that those sorts of design interventions create the conditions in which you've got more neighbourliness, right? And when you look at it, a lot of what's been built generally in the UK over the last 20 years has not been very high quality on those dimensions. And I think more neighbourliness also leads to greater safety.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Georgiou.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Keith. So, in your exchanges with Assembly Members Bakari and Garrett, obviously there was a particular focus on your experience with the British Business Bank, which, very impressive. However, I had one question, because you put a lot of the onus on your kickstarting of projects, helping various communities. I think you said 100,000 loans. However, obviously, you're dealing with an established organisation which has been heavily funded, essentially through loan facilities and other various mechanisms through the taxpayer. Now, going from a kickstart to an established organisation, how would you, with your current hats on and your previous experience, how would you tackle? Because I think you alluded to in your exchange with Assembly Member Bakari, essentially not trying to tap into the loan facility and the taxpayer-funded element. I mean, how would you address that and tackle it?
So, I mean, the business bank started off as a start-up, and after 8 years, you know, had got, I think, somewhere between 300 and 400 people working for it. So, yeah, it became, you know, it became an institution, let's say. I think there are, you know, under 200 people working at the LLDC. I think there are elements which are very common that I'd argue are very important here as well. I mean, for example, I think it's very important to create the right culture in the organisation. Whether you're a startup or you've been 8 years or whether you've been around since 2012, actually it's probably been around longer than that. But, you know, so, you know, you've got to engage people around your purpose. Yeah? And I think that's what I expect is the case within LLDC, that people are choosing to work and contribute because of the underlying goal. That's really important. You've got to get the proposition right to those people, because so they, you know, they feel they're part of the purpose, and they feel that they're getting, you know, the development opportunities they want. I think some of these things are actually common, you know, across organisations, particularly ones with a public purpose. In terms of, I think it was the second bit to the question around sort of focusing around the repayment of the debt as well. Look, I think we have to have a very sound plan, you know, that shows how we deliver both the non-financial and the financial targets. Once the plan is established, people have got to be bought into it. Obviously, externally, people have got to be bought into it, but internally as well. And then you motivate people and report back to people and engage people around, you know, the smaller aspects of that. I mean, it's doing 1,000 things well, but, you know, how people are achieving what their job is doing to ultimately deliver on that plan. So those would be the aspects of it that I would wish to see in LLDC.
And don't worry, I will be coming back to this later on a more explicit level. But I think for me, it was just trying to sort of navigate your experience between the two, to which I think you've answered it. So I'm very grateful. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Desai.
Thank you. Before I ask my question, I should say that I was a member of Newham Council's Strategic Development Committee. So I was involved with some of the planning decisions pre-Olympics. And it's good that you sort of refer to the legacy. That there is a legacy. Thankfully, there's a small but shrinking group of people who still sort of think there is a legacy. But when you compare it with other Olympic parks around the world, which have been sort of, you know, nothing's really happened. So it's good to see the park thriving. And I would highly recommend the book, if you haven't read it yet, No Ordinary Park, by the ex-Guardian journalist Dave Hill, which I think is a great read. It certainly is no ordinary park. So my question. And I should also say, I lived in Hackney Wick on Tower Block, has now been demolished in the early 80s, when there was nothing in the park, nothing at all. A dodgy nightclub and some garages on Carpenter's Road, and don't ask me what sort of businesses they dealt with. So my question, Keith, is the LLDC transferred its planning powers back to the boroughs at the end of last year. How do you see the LLDC's role evolving in support of the next phase of regeneration in and around the park?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say, my first house was in the East End as well, in Leighton, and I remember this being a big empty space, so it's remarkable what has been achieved.
Sadly, just outside my constituency.
But in terms of the changes, so I mean, obviously the changes have happened, and I think it happened towards the end of 2024 that the boundaries were reset and the planning returned to the local boroughs. I think that seems like to me to be a very, very right and timely change, and recognises the fact that actually a lot of development has occurred, and creates the opportunity for LLDC to focus on, you know, the 560 acres which are the Queen Elizabeth Park, and then to move into this next phase, which is about creating value, finishing, but then creating value from what is there. Now, I think that still requires very strong collaboration, because obviously the benefits that come from the Queen Elizabeth Park, the intent is that those are benefits that can be felt in the surrounding boroughs. So I think it's very important that there is that very high degree of collaboration, but within the new framework, I think that the LLDC can be very focused in looking for those opportunities and liaising with the boroughs to generate these outcomes I was just discussing. Now, I think it comes from a good starting point, because I think, obviously there are representatives of the boroughs either on the board or as observers on the board. And the framework that's been agreed, for example, something called the Inclusive Growth Committee, which has got representatives of the boroughs. And there's been very good dialogue, I understand, in creating this strategic framework. So I think even though the boundaries have changed, it creates focus, but it still requires that degree of collaboration and contact between LLDC and the growth boroughs around it.
Thank you. Assembly Member Russell, would you like to come in now?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good morning. So you've just been talking to Assembly Member Desai about what you described as the right and timely change of handing the planning powers over to the boroughs, and sort of really useful to sort of understand that focus now around kind of really working on what the park can do. And you talked earlier about there were the three areas of, now I can't even find the bit where I'd written my notes down.
I tried to simplify around innovation, culture and sports and leisure.
Exactly. But I think the relationship with the boroughs is complex. You've got relationships with that. The relationships with the boroughs also relate to the residents on the Olympic Park. And the social housing element on the Olympic Park is not the 50% that was envisaged at the outset in 2005. It's not the 35% that was envisaged in the LLDC plans. I understand it's around about 27% affordable, and that's not all social rent. But you've got a range of residents on the Olympic Park who are dealing with charges like the fixed estate charge. And so there are real social issues in terms of the affordability of living on the park. And so that's that element of the relationship with the residents. Do you see yourself challenging the Chief Exec on the relationship between the LLDC and the residents on the Olympic Park, who are kind of not all kind of happy with paying fixed estate charges? And also you've got the great work that's been going on with decarbonising the heat network, which those very early decisions that left the Olympic Park dependent on gas at a time of extreme volatility in prices. So it's really good to see that there are plans to deal with that before 2030, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff around those relationships with residents, and I just wonder what your perspective is on that, and how you, sort of what you see as the challenges in that relationship.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I'd say two things to start with. One is that I think the chair with the board is there to hold the CEO and the exec team to account, right? And what you want is to get from that team and to encourage, and with input from the board, you want the best possible plan that you believe is going to deliver on the objectives. And if the team is straying from that, then yes, you know, as you said, the chair can take issue with the chief executive. The second thing that I also wanted to mention, though, is I think the chair is in a slightly different position as well, which is that you're a figurehead, right? You're a point of contact. You're an ambassador, and you're in a way you're the very highest liaison officer that's going, you know, and I think there is a role for the chair to communicate with and seek inputs from the range of different partners, stakeholders, and I definitely include residents in that. I mean, my starting point for this, and it's a bit of a principle, would be, you know, we can't create a plan for inclusive growth without hearing the voices of the people who live in and work in and around the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. So I will be pushing for very strong lines of communication between LLDC and the different communities. And of course, where necessary, where right, of course, we'll have to coordinate that with the other boroughs as well. But yes, I think there has to be very strong communication. In terms of the, let's say, the underlying issue that you're pointing, I think it's going to be very complex, which I think you've mentioned yourself, you know, that there are developers who are trying to make the financial equation work. You've got higher costs of construction. You've got higher costs of financing. You've got the commitments towards affordable housing, which I think have got to be met. Once again, I think anything else would be entirely incompatible with the inclusive growth mandate. And so you've got to try and make that equation work. And I think, you know, that's, you know, obviously that's some very important discussions around what the development equation looks like. We're in a little bit of a cyclical downturn. We are in a cyclical downturn for housing development. It's turned down across the country and specifically in London. The good news is, I think, that LLDC has got its joint ventures in place. It's identified its developers and is actually ready to move forward as confidence returns to the sector. So, not an easy job. Lots of tension, I think, in terms of the requirements of the different people and parties involved. But yeah, something that has to be tackled and refined.
Do you think there are opportunities in the LLDC for kind of collaboration with the boroughs on, specifically on the kind of issues around access to cultural provision, access to employment, which you've talked about quite a bit, and kind of actually working in tandem with the boroughs on some of that?
I mean, my natural approach to this is to be collaborative. I mean, I don't see how this can be an island without actually working with the surrounding boroughs and identifying and building on and keying into initiatives which are taking shape. So, of course, there is a central responsibility. It's focused on the Queen Elizabeth Park, but the benefits are meant to accrue elsewhere, and including elsewhere. And so I think that there has to be that shared approach. And it takes me back to some of the experience I think I bring. I mean, I've had to, create solutions, find agreements between parties that come from very different positions. Even two ministries in the UK government have very strongly different positions. The private sector can have a view that's different. You have to bring these things together. And so my style, I think my approach would be to major on collaboration across those boundaries.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Assemblymember Garrett.
Hi, thinking about the Queen Elizabeth Park and sort of area, what do you think are the sort of key challenges that LLD faces and that the Queen Elizabeth Park has in sort of achieving its goals, really?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think let's say I'll take a shorter term view in terms of what are the immediate challenges. I think there is a challenge to kind of complete development. There's still some infrastructure left, and to address the issue that Assemblymember Russell was just saying around housing and generating that momentum. There's a challenge about decarbonising the district heating system. I mean, these are not small challenges, but they're immediate challenges. We have a cultural district, which is taking shape. Not all of those elements have been completed or opened. There's some very good indications that people are very interested in this. The V&A East Storehouse has been, a national success. People are travelling to visit it. ABBA has been a great success. And I think we need to make sure that the East Bank as a whole is a success. I take the point that someone mentioned earlier, which is that, it's got to include some free access. V&A hopefully will do that because that's its policy. Free programming as well as ticketed programming. So I think that's a challenge, is to get that kind of cocktail of elements right and delivering. And I think that there's then a challenge of actually making a reality of the jobs and the talent agenda. Yeah, and that I think is about reaching across boundaries into the boroughs and understanding what are the challenges that are faced there.
I mean, you mentioned housing. I think figures I've got here suggest, I think since 2016, about 1,300 homes have been started and about 1,200 completed on LLDC land. I think that was as of November. Obviously, that's quite a low level of activity, let's say, over quite a lengthy period. Do you have a sort of analysis of what's gone wrong and what needs to be different to get more of that delivery actually happening?
Well, I mean, the overall target is, I believe, just shy of 6,000 homes. So yes, it's only a minority of those that have been built so far. And the honest answer is I don't yet have a view, but I have identified that as being absolutely top of the list to get behind the detail of it. I can imagine some of the factors, some of the things that I've discussed before in terms of the state of the market, costs of construction, economic uncertainty. And I know that there are, just by virtue of the finance background that we were talking about earlier, there are risk-sharing arrangements that can be put in place. So it comes down to some of the detail as to how are these JVs constructed, what are the opportunities to create leverage over the JV partners and to accelerate development. So I couldn't take you into the detail of that now, but it's very high up on my personal agenda.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose one of the concern I have when I look forward, everything I hear right now about house building in London in particular, is that viability has really tanked. There was a report a couple of months ago from Molior which suggested that large swathes of London, it's just not commercially viable to build. And so I think, if you've had almost a decade in which, on the whole, strangely, the pandemic starts to look like an easier period to build these things than now, it does, to me, flag up a real risk. But you've identified that as a key thing that you want to get to grips with.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny. I think it probably is a real risk that has to be, identified, discussed, and worked on. The underlying point is, I suppose, there is a need for more housing in London. There's a need for more affordable housing in London. Housing is very important because it will generate more activity and more community in and around the Olympic Park. And housing itself will actually start to generate the council tax and then the business rates that go on top of that to start to repay the debt. So it's not just a small issue. It's one of these kind of fundamental issues, which is a big driver of the future financial sustainability of the park.
Yeah, on the affordable or subsidised, as you might call it, housing element of that, obviously the government has recently reduced the threshold required to do with these issues around viability of actually getting things built. I don't know whether that's something you've looked at closely, because obviously that speaks to the financial viability of getting these things off the ground, the proportion of affordable housing in there.
Yeah, I mean, the view I have coming in, and certainly the view that I've discussed with the CEO, is that there is no intention to reduce the affordable housing target. I think there is sensibly probably a piece of work to understand how the affordable housing grant programme might be appropriate to the developments on the Queen Elizabeth Park. And once again, that might be something that could help move the equation and create the conditions in which we can improve the pace of residential development.
Okay, and you also mentioned what I would think of as like the more commercial elements of the building. So, for example, the stuff on the East Bank, the theatre and the university and so on. Those, during the last year's budget cycle, so the budget cycle leading into this current year's budget, what we heard on the budget committee repeatedly from LLDC was that they were experiencing, as in fact was everyone, really severe cost pressure, cost inflation across all those builds. Obviously, that's parallel to, but in some ways different from the cost pressures on housing. Is that something that you've looked at, making sure that element, the non-housing construction element, gets done?
Yeah, look, and once again, I can't claim I've had the opportunity to look into any of the detail because, literally I haven't had the access to the information. This falls into managing the risks in LLDC, and they are, you have to have a very good handle on those risks. They're financial, they're commercial, they're operational, they are legal, they're reputational. You've got to have them all covered. And the risks of inflation in construction costs and how you respond to that, ideally in an organisation, that wouldn't be a crisis. You would know how you're going to respond to it. And so that's what I would be looking for, I think, in terms of how the organisation is working and what kind of contingencies and responses and mitigations it's got to those kinds of developments.
Yeah, I mean, reputational, you mentioned. I think that's an interesting word to me, because one of my concerns is when you have a building like this, which is several of them are kind of landmark buildings, the organisational impetus can be, we have to make this a landmark building, we have to deliver it, to the spec and to the standard that we want to do, and obviously then in your project management triangle, it then tends to be cost that spirals. What's your view on that kind of project, that kind of pressure that arises in an organisation where nobody wants to be the person who tries to curtail the costs?
Look, I honestly, I think it's about openness and dispassionate debate about this, and, that the openness is that there's got to be good information flowing, and nobody wants to be taken by surprise by, a development which has got a negative financial impact. And frankly, that's the job of the board and the board committees who are monitoring and looking into the performance, including the financial performance of the organisation. So, and once you realise you've got an issue, then you've got to start making decisions. Now, that takes you into another area, which I think is also tremendously important, which is you're dealing with partnerships. You're dealing with stakeholders. And you've got to have honest conversations with people, about whether you're prepared to change the spec. It's so I'm not relating this to any particular example, but I'm imagining and thinking through the ways in which you would address this as an organisation. And I think that I feel quite strongly about this. I think we are talking here not about an individual chair, but we're talking about an organisation. And an organisation that needs to deliver, that needs to, have the right plans, that needs to have high standards of governance, that needs to work really well with its partners. And that is, yes, there are individual issues, but there's also, I think, a responsibility of the chair to make sure that the organisation works in that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Georgiou.
Thank you. And just before I proceed to what I promised we'd come back to on the first financial sustainability of the organisation, I just wanted to probe a bit of your exchange with Assembly Member Garrett. So you, I think, thankfully for us, you used very important words, openness and transparency. But then you seem to have, preceding that, go down the line of telling Assembly members what we wanted to hear, which is, yes, we're dedicated to all this affordable housing. No, we're not planning to change our plans. And then you preceded that with, we know the market's horrible. We know that developers don't really want to go down the affordable housing route. So therefore, how does that tie in with the openness and transparency that you're wanting to push within the organisation, which I think is very welcome, if you're not willing to, and I don't want to ascribe any words to you and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you're not willing to say, actually, yes, this and that needs to change, let's say, use the affordability as an aspect in order to meet the housing targets?
Yeah, look, I think I believe that there is real challenges, yeah, and you know the marketplace for housing development, you know, says it itself. So I'm not trying to walk away from those challenges, and in fact, I think they are real challenges, and I think the organisation will have to work really hard on it, and certainly I didn't mean to, you know, in any way state that this was, you know, a kind of straightforward thing to achieve. All I'm saying, I think, is that it will take getting into the detail to understand the real measure of the challenge, and then to come up with a plan and a response to it. So that's how I feel about it, and I think if I had the opportunity of more knowledge, more information, more time, I'd probably be saying something with a bit more flesh on the bones around it.
So can I take that as then, despite what you've said previously, well, and once again, don't want to put words in your mouth, and perhaps you were saying that the current position for LLDC and the current chair is effectively to maintain, using the affordable housing element, that proportion. But once you get into the details, that could possibly change, once you've had a better chance to look at the viability of the schemes, proposed schemes.
I would say in a slightly different way, that's the objective. Mm-hmm. I think it's an objective that the organisation has signed off on. It should aspire to achieve the objective. The objective is there for good reasons, obviously. And you would look at all possible routes to achieve that, you know, through any measures you can take, you know, including, for example, whether there's anything that is a benefit in terms of the affordable housing grant that could help the situation. I think moving away from the objective would be the very last thing that you would want to do. But if you had to say that that was something that was unachievable or achievable in a slightly different way, then of course you'd have to lay that out and set that out. Take it through the governance processes accordingly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. I'm at risk of possibly agreeing with the current Secretary of State for Housing and the Mayor of London. You know, they posited the idea that 20% of something is better than 40% of nothing. I guess, would you, given that you would be the mayor's appointee if you were to get the role, would you ascribe to that view in this particular area?
I would say that you know, there is an objective to seek to achieve. You definitely maximise. I don't know where the 20% comes from, so I wouldn't sign up to that. I would say that the organisation is seeking to achieve its targets and should apply, you know, all of the levers it has to achieve that. And that currently, we are facing a marketplace which I think is least hospitable to meeting those targets, and there should be, I think there should be thought should be put to what needs to change in the environment, and whether that's a question of time by which the environment will be better.
Okay, thank you. So then moving on to my last bit. So how will you ensure that LLDC strengthens its commercial focus, reducing its call on the public person offering greater value for money? And I feel like you've addressed quite a bit of that already. So I don't know if there's any additional further things that you wanted to bring in answering that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the starting point is you've got to have the long-term view. You've got to understand the drivers with which you'll ultimately repay that significant investment. I think that comes from the development route that we've talked about, the residential, the growth of businesses, ultimately possibly the capital realisation in the future. And in the short term, you've got to look for opportunities to generate income as an organisation from the assets that it has. Now that will, there could be partnerships. I think there's an opportunity for greater partnerships. There could be, opportunities to, for sponsorship and naming rights and these kind of things. So you'd focus on the long term, but also focus on the short term in terms of the operating revenues that you can generate.
And I appreciate that you wouldn't have sort of the revenue figures in front of you for the various businesses, and the bits that a chair would normally have the numbers for from LLDC. But have you thought about one particular example? I mean, you've given us a very broad response, and I appreciate you haven't got the job yet, so you may not have these at your fingertips. But have you thought about where you would sweat one particular asset in a fundamental way to generate additional revenue?
The answer is that I would have those views actually once I'd spoken to the executive team. Right, the executive team have produced a plan, a detailed plan. It should have all of these components within it. I don't think it's my place right now to second guess that plan, but I will have views as a person who is commercial, who knows how the commercial world operates and how you work in partnership with commerce and with finance. I will have views, but I'm not in command of the detail to answer the question at the moment.
And that's perfectly fair, as I caveated. Well, I'm looking forward to some robust views from you in the future if you are to get the role. So thank you so much, Chair.
Assemblymember Desai.
Keith, can greater use be made of the London Stadium? It's often forgotten, but LLDC actually owns the stadium, even though West Ham sometimes give the impression that they own the stadium. And I remember some time ago, not that long ago, there was talk of bringing international cricket, T20, to the stadium. So do you think the scope for there to explore other options for maximizing income?
I haven't thought about those issues, and I know that there's been a development in terms of the stadium going into to be owned by a GLA subsidiary itself. What I do think has to happen is there has to be, once again, a very strong working relationship between LLDC and the stadium and the team that has responsibility for the stadium. But I don't have a view particularly on the specific opportunity you mentioned.
Yeah, sadly, nothing can be done about the 99-year deal that West Ham got, a ludicrously cheap deal, some £2 million per year that they pay. It's a contract with no break clause, as I understand.
Yeah, I've heard background to that. Yeah,
signed off by ex-mayor Boris Johnson.
Assemblymember Garrett.
Yeah, I'd be pleased to hear this is not about the naming rights of the stadium. Thinking about the long-term plans for LLDC. So obviously originally it was effectively the planning authority for a large area covering multiple boroughs beyond the park. That in 2023 was shrunk down to effectively just the park itself. Thinking about the long-term prospects for LLDC, ultimately the understanding is that it will cease to exist at some point. I don't know whether you've given any thought to that, how you see the sort of very long-term trajectory of LLDC and what you would start to put in place now to get us to that point?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think my understanding is that there's been a recent review, which I think fully completed at the beginning of this year, led to the changes that you've mentioned. This allows LLDC, I think, to focus on the next phase. The next phase is, as I've explained, which is to really generate greater activity, commerce, jobs, opportunity, well-being for the surrounding communities. I think the future, the planning for the long term, I think, is really important. I mean, there's no point in just planning for the short term. We've got to plan for the long term. It's been a problem in many economic development issues of short-term thinking. And I think that the repayment of the debt is by its nature a long-term endeavour. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. I think it should then be it's at the discretion, I think, of the mayor as to how they want to organise, let's say, the activities and challenges within that. So I will be focusing on the factors that will drive long-term financial sustainability, but the duration of that is for a decision elsewhere.
Okay. One of the things that the Assembly has previously asked for was a timeline which provides clarity on the future of the LLDC, including an end date to its status as MDC, which, if I were perhaps to put that more bluntly, if you create an organisation, that organisation will always feel that it needs to continue to exist, particularly the people who earn their wage from working in or running that organisation. But it's not, the objective was not that the LLDC would run forever. It was a job creation scheme for the people who work for it, but it would run for a defined period to achieve its objectives. And obviously, one of the things that you would bring as chair is that you wouldn't be working full time for it. You would be there scrutinising that activity. And therefore, it seems to me it would fall to you more so than the executive team. In the number of answers you've effectively said you would defer to the executive team. Perhaps what I'm putting to you is that the executive team might not be so motivated as some others to think about a winding up date, and so that might be something that falls to you.
Yeah, no, quite actually, and there's an organisation that I set up in 2012 to manage the sort of mortgage books of Northern Rock, Bradford and Bingley, and we're in the process of switching off the lights quite shortly. I'm a non-exec at the moment. So I've been on that journey, actually, of an organisation delivering what's required of it, and then planning its rundown. And I think that the interest I would have actually is about, let's say, strategically developing and thinking about those scenarios. So if once you get into this and you say this is the next phase of development for the Queen Elizabeth Park, yes, I think you do need to think strategically about what the scenarios are on a longer term basis, and presenting those for people to either make decisions on, to make decisions at the point they want to make the decision, I say, but to have a view about what the alternative models for it could be going forward. Understood. I don't think it's the very first thing I would do, to be in all honesty, but I think it's something that you're right, as a chair, you should develop that view.
Yeah, so I look forward to you developing that view, and I suppose, gazing into my crystal ball, there will probably at some point be a plenary where you'll be back here, assuming you're appointed, answering questions from the Assembly about what's happening at LLDC, and gazing into my other crystal ball as the chair of the Budget and Performance Committee, there's a good chance you'll be at the Budget and Performance Committee, and I think it's very highly probable that that question will come up again. So I would urge you to, even if it's not the first thing you do give it some thought, because I think it is a question that the Assembly is likely to return to. Because I think the Executive have proven, perhaps lacking some alacrity in answering and getting to that point. Okay. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else from some Assembly members to say?
Yeah. two transport-related questions. So Stratford International Station is international in name only. The trains don't stop there, the Eurostar. Stephen Timms, my MP, I live in East Ham, first made the call for Stratford to be an international station in the mid-80s as chair of new planning committee, and the then Labour government agreed in 1998, but nothing's happened ever since. So, I mean, would you consider linking up with the campaign, which Stephen Timms and Uma Kumaran is now supporting the call for Stratford International to be international in an operational sort of way, and also the infrastructure around Stratford Tube Station. I think it's the busiest interchange station in London. The figures came out just recently, about 2 weeks ago. And I remember a couple of years ago, there was a vigorous campaign to get government help in terms of the necessary funds to carry out the major sort of works needed to transform the station. There's thousands of homes being built around the station, the increasing usage of the park. And I think that campaign, again, seems to have lost some momentum. So I think certainly we need to sort of keep on pressing the case for proper government help to make Stratford Station, meet the increasing demands, from the local sort of housing developments and the increasing usage of the park.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think communications and transport to the Olympic Park, are absolutely critical. Stratford is the front door. You come in, most people, or many people will come in that way. There are other communication routes in as well. I have, like many people here probably, have witnessed the congestion in Stratford Tube Station in particular, and I will be the first person to lobby through the channels that, are appropriate for there to be investment in that station. I understand it's taking tens of millions more commuters and users than it was originally designed for, and I think it probably represents a constraint on the park.
I must say, I remember Stratford when we only had the Central Line, East and Westbound. Those two platforms and the North London Line, as compared to what it is today. But yeah, and also about the international campaign, international station.
Yeah, I mean, it falls somewhat into the same bucket, which is you need to really understand and develop the communication routes into and out of the park. So, yeah, I would take a look at that as well, absolutely.
Assemblymember Russell.
Thank you. And following up on that around access in and out of the park, something that relates to two of the pillars in the new framework, the habitat one and health and well-being, which is conditions for walking and cycling, and in particular the relationship between the LLDC area. You've got the various boroughs surrounding it, and the historically, sort of at the very beginning, there was not enough thought given to the walking and cycling conditions through the park. They have made some changes after things were pointed out by various organisations like London Living Streets and the London Cycling Campaign about ways to make access in and out of the park by walking and cycling more inclusive and also more desirable, to help reduce the amount of congestion and to make sure that as many journeys as possible were being made by modes that promote activity in daily journeys and therefore public health. And I'm just wondering if that's something that is on your radar when you're thinking about those relationships, ongoing relationships with the boroughs, between the park and the boroughs.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a sort of a handful of things that I think are kind of underlying tenets, almost principles that have to be observed. We talked about safety before, accessibility, sustainability, and active travel as well across the park. And I would like to see all of the decisions that are made, inside the park, paying due attention to those kind of principles. there is the opportunity to do the very best on those dimensions, I think, because this is a park which is, still being developed and there's design and there's design expertise that can be applied. I mean, I think the kind of meeting points between the park and the surrounding boroughs, I think absolutely we should think about that as well. I think, I can't think of anything worse than finding that, your cycle lane or step-free access or sort of is interrupted at a certain point. So I think yes, I agree with you. I think it should be looked at closely.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Two questions, Keith. One is sponsorship of the London Stadium. I find it very surprising that such an iconic venue, we still can't attract a suitable sponsor. We may have missed the boat because speaking to someone in the world of football finance, the key years are the year before West Ham moved into stadium or the first year. And I think an eldest officer told the budget committee a couple of years ago that they were looking for something region of £3 to £4 million. A bit of a mistake to announce your financial sort of plans or what you're looking for in public. I mean, where are we with the sponsorship deal? I mean, is it a dead idea or are we flogging a dead horse?
I think sponsorship of facilities in the Queen Elizabeth Park, has to be a live issue, and we have to seek the best deals and the best, the income that can come from that. With respect to the stadium, I think now that the stadium is actually in a separate subsidiary under GLA, then the requirement, I think, is for a strong sense of working partnership between LLDC and that new subsidiary, because I think the actual decision around a naming right will be elsewhere. But I think there is the need for very strong working between the teams on that point.
Sure. And the other thing is, although you've got the host boroughs, but at the end of the day, the park is a London park. I would say it's actually a national institution. So what are your thoughts about promoting the park sort of London-wide? I mean, I don't have the most recent figures in terms of usage of the park or where people sort of come from. We were given some figures, I think, a couple of years ago. But I think there is a need to actually sell the park much more to Londoners.
Yeah, and I think, one great opportunity for that is for the kind of the launch of the East Bank itself as a whole.
Sure.
And I'd say as well, I think that's one of the roles that the chair has got to take on.
Sure.
There has to be, engagement with the media, engagement in terms of public speaking. There's a great story to be told, and the story is going to get better.
Yeah. And finally, Chair, there's still this perception that there are two Stratfords, the Olympic Park side of Stratford, and then what I would call Old Stratford, around the town hall and the other side of the old shopping centre. I mean, how do you reconcile the two Stratfords in terms of usage of the park, the job opportunities for local people, amongst other things?
Yeah, I think it falls into the bucket of that you want to create access routes into the park from all the surrounding boroughs. You need to understand the needs, the job needs, the business needs from all the different boroughs. So that will be, for me, that will be part of the engagement with the surrounding boroughs and their teams to understand those differences where they exist.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and it is my pleasure to welcome Year 4 students from Godwin Primary School in Barking and Dagenham who have just joined us in the chamber. That is now the end of our question and answer session. Can I please thank Keith for attending today's meeting? You may be free to leave, but please sit and observe the committee discussion from the public gallery if you wish. The committee is now required to make a decision on its recommendation to the Mayor as to whether or not the nominee should be appointed as chair of the LLDC. There will be three options: to agree to recommend the appointment, not to object to the appointment and make further comment, or to agree not to recommend the appointment. Would anyone like to start off the discussion?
Could I just check that our guests will be able to get out?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, just...
Yeah. Assembly Member Desai?
I don't see any reason.
Microphone.
Chair, I don't see any reasons not to confirm the appointment. I think he answered the questions sort of adequately in my opinion. Quite impressive CV. Certainly the financial background, which quite often where we've got people applying for such jobs don't have that background. And given the financial challenges LLDC still faces, so I would say yes.
Someone Garrett?
Yeah, so I would say, I think from the beginning he was quite clear. It is quite clear that he's coming into this role as like the finance guy rather than, the building guy or the planning guy or the public realm guy or something like that. I think that's fair enough. That's a useful skill set. And, I think he was very clear in his own mind about that. I think overall I don't have a reason not to appoint. I think a couple of concerns. One was that a mild disappointment, perhaps. The questions asked in relation to the Design Council and his work there about beauty in the public realm, I think it's... well, we live in a utilitarian world, don't we? And we build lampposts and things and fences that do the job and no more than that. And I gave him an opportunity to say that it would be lovely in an iconic park like the Queen Elizabeth Park and the former Olympic site to create a beautiful public realm. And he chose instead to talk about security. Well, maybe that's just my personal view. And perhaps more importantly, I think myself and others probed for questions about details of specific elements or buildings that have run into difficulties, the building programme as a whole, questions around the viability of building projects and the percentage of affordable or subsidised housing that would go into them. And I think on all of those he was quite deferential to the executive team, and he doesn't seem to come in with a view. He comes in as a sort of a, let's see what they think and go with that. I think it was a bit disappointing that he didn't really seem to have his own view about those issues. It just seemed to be, well, I'm sure the executive team will have a discussion and something will emerge from it. I'm sure that is true, and I'm sure something will emerge from it. But there was a sense of him not having thought himself into the role quite as much as I would have liked for such a senior position.
Member Russell.
I heard the answer to the question about the public realm differently to you, Assembly Member Garrett. I specifically wrote down the points that were made about neighbourliness leading to greater safety, and so thinking about the contribution that the public realm makes to community safety. So I actually had no concerns about that answer. I think...
Sorry,
yeah.
I think that is exactly as I understood it as well. I asked about beauty and he answered about safety and security.
Safety. Sorry. Public safety, I think, is different to security. Maybe you meant, when you said security, you meant public safety, but I think those are two different things. Security makes me think about security guards, whereas community safety makes me think about a place where people feel comfortable and safe. And those are two different things. In terms of overall, I was really reassured by the actually the sense of detail around coming into the position, the the knowledge about the three parts of the framework that the LLDC only announced 4 days ago: habitat, inclusive growth, health and well-being, and I thought that the relationship, that sense of what the job of the chair is as opposed to the job of the executive was very well described and defined. So, and I was also reassured by the emphasis on the need to have good partnerships with the boroughs, not just relationships, but partnerships, seeing that as an ongoing relationship, because I think that is going to be absolutely critical for if the LLDC needs to develop its future in relation to the boroughs, and that whole relationship has just shifted with the shift of the planning powers to the boroughs. So having a chair who really has an understanding of that and kind of understanding the value of those relationships with the boroughs seemed to me to be a useful attributes. And was there anything else? Yes, the other piece was the answer given to Assembly Member Desai about the old Stratford, the new Stratford, and the idea that these new jobs and thinking about the kinds of a range of jobs being created that can suit many different people living locally, but whether on the Olympic Park or in the surrounding boroughs. I thought that was a kind of a reassuring kind of understanding and description of the idea of what inclusive growth means. And so I thought that was, that was, one of the other points, sort of constructive things that I took away. And I think, yes, one of the other things I wrote down was that sense of strong collaboration and the need for strong collaboration with all the different partners. And I thought that to have a chair who is kind of coming with those values felt like a constructive future for the LLDC.
Thank you. Member Georgiou.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, look, clearly he has the experience, but I think he fell into the trap that we usually get from people looking for public appointment these days, and they're telling us what they want to hear, what we want to hear, rather than what we should be hearing. And I think that was, quite frustrating. I got the vibe of various different periods that he was both willing and unwilling to have difficult conversations. He stressed the fact, which brought me a bit more back on side, the fact that he wasn't willing to comment on particular difficult decisions that have to be made in the future until, if he were to be appointed to the role, speak with his executive team. And then on the other hand, in principle, say that difficult decisions had to be the last response rather than the first, which I think when you're looking to someone to lead an organisation, all options have to be on the table at all times, whether they're difficult or not. And so therefore I question whether he, in his, let's say, interview to us, or discussion with us, would be willing to make those difficult decisions in the first instance. And I think a disappointment for me was that anybody from the outside can see the challenges that LLDC face. And I don't think it would have been inappropriate for somebody seeking to lead the organisation to fundamentally say, look, these are the challenges, this is where I think we've gone wrong, this is what I think we've done well, and possibly this is what we could do about it. So I think for those reasons, I'm very much on the fence. But of course, I think the thing that speaks in Keith's favour is obviously his experience, and he was quite eloquent, and he clearly does have somewhat of a vision. But I think he could have been far more robust on the future of the organisation than he actually was in the discussion. Thank you.
Member Bakari.
Just to add, I think obviously everyone's noticed the impressive CV and experience that he has. But I just wanted to note very quickly about the inclusive planning approach that he has, about family and child-friendly centred approach. That I thought that was quite an interesting point that he made, and I think that would be something that I'd be wanting to look further into, particularly his experience with the Design Council and how that goes forward. So I do share some of the slight concerns, but I'm not worried enough for that not to be a supportive position from my perspective.
Member Desai.
I think talking about vision, we could have had more of his thoughts on where LLDC will be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. I think that was missing. And secondly, just to say that it's not a yes or no sort of decision we have to come to today. We can confirm with reservations, which we've done in the past, or points that we want him to take on board. So qualified confirmation.
Does anyone else have any further points to make before we discuss what recommendation we want to make?
I just had a point of clarification about what Assemblymember Desai said. Were you advocating to qualify with particular qualifications?
That's one of the options, yeah. I mean, because I think there are some reservations that have been expressed. I don't think there's enough to block the appointment, to not confirm, but we can quite rightly take on board members' concerns. So, yeah, it would be a qualified confirmation that it can be advisory note, it can be confirmed with reservations or with issues that we want.
I think is reservations a bit too strong a word? That's my only concern.
I was actually just changing that with issues that we want him to take on board.
Yeah.
With comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do have to remember what his role is in terms of holding the executive to account. I'm not sure it's necessarily his job to be setting out the 10-year vision for LLDC. I would more expect that to be the chief exec, but we'll welcome further comments.
Well, I think very much he views it as his role to steer the organisation a far more commercial way. You know, that's what our questions were focused on. He didn't shy away from it. He didn't put that caveat in, well, as chair, I need to, you know, defer to my chief exec. He was very much, we need to look into things, make sure that we advance things in the right way in a far more commercial aspect.
But my suggestion is, the way I understand the role of a chair is that I think personally it's the CEO who should be setting out a 5-year, 10-year plan, and the chair should be holding the CEO to account to their plan rather than formulating the plan themselves.
If I may just respond to that, Chair. I fully appreciate that. You're not wrong. The point I'm trying to make is that clearly we have someone before us who is not just going to sit idly by on a board, as I don't think he would as chair of the board. I think he will have a hands-on approach, although not running of the day-to-day, which is not his role. He will have an opinion, which I think is a good thing. You know, so I think we need to be conscious that is the sort of person that we have in front of us, which I think speaks to his credit, despite all my previous caveats.
Senator Russell, did you have something to add? Or no? Senator McGarrett.
I was thinking I might be able to save us some time. I'm happy to agree to recommend the candidate's appointment to the Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also happy to agree to recommend the appointment, but welcome further thoughts from some members.
I'm happy to recommend the appointment to the Mayor.
For what it's worth, I'm not, so I'd prefer to, well, clearly I'm already outvoted, but I'd say it anyway, to write to the Mayor to provide comments regarding the proposed appointment.
I'm happy to recommend.
Senator Desai?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we have a majority in favour of agreeing to recommend the appointment. So, yeah, that it be agreed to recommend that the Mayor should proceed with his appointment of Keith Morgan, CBE, to the office of Chair of the London Legacy Development Corporation. So a letter will be sent to the Mayor following this meeting to confirm the committee's recommendation. As I have no other business, that concludes today's meeting.
This is the broadcast.